Cybersecurity Crises. Lessons from Ingram Micro's ransomware attack. Ingram Micro is facing a major cybersecurity crisis as a ransomware attack has triggered a multi-day IT outage, disrupting services for customers and partners across the globe. The outage, which reportedly began on July 3rd, has impacted several of the company's core platforms and left it unable to process or ship orders. Cyber attacks on IT distributors directly compromise global supply chain elasticity as well. With fulfillment platforms offline, enterprise buyers face order backlogs, shipment uncertainty, and stalled hardware provisioning. OEMs lose visibility into downstream demand. Resellers breach client SLAs, and enterprise procurement teams face cascading deferrals in capital recognition, said Sanchit via Gogia, Chief Analyst and CEO at Greyhound Research. Gogia added that the impact is most severe in regions and sectors where procurement centralization is common, particularly in government, telecom, and large-scale retail. As quoted in csonline.com, in an article authored by Nitty Single published on July 7, 2025. Beyond the media quote, our view in full. Pressed for time? You can focus solely on the Greyhound flashpoints that follow. Each one distills the full analysis into a sharp, executive-ready takeaway, combining our official standpoint, validated through Pulse data from ongoing CXO trackers, and grounded in field notes from real-world advisory engagements. Distributor outages test enterprise trust in incident communication protocols. Greyhound flashpoint. Cyber incidents affecting IT distributors can create immediate downstream friction for enterprise procurement teams, especially when communication is inconsistent or delayed. Per Greyhound CIO Pulse 2025, 69% of enterprise CIOs now classify timely breach transparency as a critical metric when evaluating supply chain partners. In outage scenarios, absence of information can be more damaging than the incident itself, fueling uncertainty, contract stress, and reputational fatigue across the ecosystem. Greyhound standpoint. According to Greyhound Research, enterprises increasingly view real-time communication as a foundational element of vendor trust, particularly when cyber incidents disrupt fulfillment or licensing operations. While legal and forensic considerations may delay full disclosure, structured and time-bound updates are expected. When a distributor fails to provide visibility into restoration timelines or workaround paths, it can catalyze operational churn, create planning bottlenecks, and prompt long-term supplier diversification. The incident response script for supply chain actors must evolve beyond IT containment to include clear, sequenced stakeholder dialogue. Greyhound Pulse. Per Greyhound CIO Pulse 2025, 62% of technology decision-makers across North America and Asia-Pacific now expect distributors and logistics partners to issue breach-related advisories within 24 hours of confirmed disruption. Among these, over half also require access to live service status feeds or contingency contact lines. Gaps in these areas were cited as a source of downstream execution delays across multiple sectors, especially retail, manufacturing, and healthcare. Greyhound Field Notes. Per a recent Greyhound Field Note from a South Asia-based enterprise in consumer technology distribution, delayed communication from a fulfillment partner during a cyber incident resulted in procurement gridlock ahead of a seasonal retail spike. With no RPO or RTO guidance forthcoming, procurement leadership initiated emergency realignment with secondary suppliers at a higher cost base. The incident triggered revised BCP thresholds, including real-time SLA telemetry and cross-supplier fallback protocols. Threat actors Escalate focus on intermediary platforms with high ecosystem leverage. Greyhound Flashpoint. Recent ransomware incidents have reaffirmed a strategic shift among threat actors, away from isolated enterprises and toward high-leverage intermediaries, such as IT distributors and fulfillment hubs. Per Greyhound CIO Pulse 2025, 53% of cybersecurity leaders flagged third-party aggregation points as their most exposed digital interfaces. These incidents are no longer isolated disruptions. They're systemic tests of enterprise ecosystem resilience. Greyhound standpoint. According to Greyhound Research, intermediaries such as IT distributors, software aggregators, and backend processors now sit squarely in the threat crosshairs. These organizations possess significant transaction gravity, often processing licensing, inventory, or infrastructure orders for hundreds of downstream clients. Threat actors recognize the multiplier effect. By compromising a central node, they disrupt value chains at scale. As a result, CISOs must elevate these actors from passive procurement partners to strategic threat vectors and subject them to full-spectrum risk modeling. Greyhound Pulse. Greyhound CIO Pulse 2025 shows 61% of enterprise CISOs have redesigned red team playbooks to simulate ransomware intrusion via distribution or logistics channels. Common failure points include unsecured VPN concentrators, legacy ERP interfaces, and co-build authentication credentials. Sectors with high reliance on centralized fulfillment, such as telco, pharma, and industrial manufacturing, rank this as a top 5 systemic risk for 2025. Greyhound Field Notes. Per a Greyhound field note from a large Middle East-based infrastructure operator, a ransomware attack at a regional software distribution partner caused a week-long delay in field equipment provisioning. Although the breach did not directly impact the operator's core systems, it halted a key deployment cycle and triggered board-level risk discussions. The company has since revised its vendor classification matrix, incorporating breach simulation metrics and alternative vendor pathways into business continuity audits. Risk governance for distributors must evolve from procurement to resilience lens. Greyhound Flashpoint. IT distributors are no longer just commercial brokers. They're digital touchpoints that require enterprise-grade security validation. Greyhound CIO Pulse 2025 shows 48% of global CIOs now evaluate fulfillment partners with the same risk thresholds used for core infrastructure vendors. Security gaps in distribution are no longer downstream problems. They're upstream vulnerabilities that demand upstream governance. Greyhound Standpoint. According to Greyhound Research, the rise in ransomware attacks against logistics and distribution players has made it imperative for enterprises to embed resilience metrics into procurement frameworks. Distributor assessments must now extend beyond price points and rebate tiers to include breach response readiness, log integrity testing, and encryption protocols for data flows. Enterprises must ask harder questions. Does the distributor support tiered access control? Is there a failover path for core services? How frequently are incident response plans exercised? This shift from transactional trust to architectural trust will define the next wave of IT sourcing governance. Greyhound Pulse. Greyhound CIO Pulse 2025 reveals that 44% of enterprise buyers now require their top 3 distribution partners to participate in quarterly continuity simulations. However, only 19% report consistent compliance. The compliance gap is most acute in regions with high centralization of fulfillment, particularly Southeast Asia and parts of Eastern Europe, where partners may lack the technical maturity or process infrastructure to meet enterprise-grade resilience standards. Greyhound Field Notes. Per a Greyhound field note from a European financial services client, a legacy fulfillment provider failed to support a scheduled continuity simulation, triggering a reclassification of the vendor to non-critical status. The enterprise subsequently engaged a multi-vendor strategy with auto failover terms and coordinated RTO thresholds. While this introduced marginal procurement complexity, it helped preserve deal timelines during later external disruptions. Supply chain security requires co-owned resilience beyond contractual SLAs. Greyhound Flashpoint. Enterprise supply chain frameworks must expand beyond SLA enforcement to active resilience stewardship. Greyhound CIO Pulse 2025 reveals that 67% of CIOs believe their third-party governance is operationally sound but strategically reactive. True cyber resilience will require joint ownership across CIO, CISO, and CFO functions, coupled with dynamic tiering of partners based on breach readiness, not just spend. Greyhound Standpoint. According to Greyhound Research, ransomware events affecting core supply partners underscore the need for co-governed resilience practices. Enterprise IT must embed continuity observability and failover validation into the core of vendor operations. This includes real-time visibility into partner system health, structured communication frameworks for crisis events, and escalation workflows that trigger pre-agreed recovery actions. Procurement contracts must evolve to include both traditional SLAs and next-generation SLRs, service-level resilience clauses that define business continuity obligations in measurable terms. Greyhound Pulse. Greyhound CIO Pulse 2025 indicates that while 59% of enterprise buyers recognize distributor visibility as critical to continuity, fewer than 30% report having structured escalation paths for incident disclosure or restoration updates. The maturity gap is widest in high-volume fulfillment environments where legacy relationships remain governed by cost optics over risk-weighted performance. Greyhound Field Notes. Per a Greyhound field note from a large LATAM enterprise in regulated financial services, the CISO noted that a cyber event at a fulfillment logistics partner disrupted deployment of software updates across branch networks. The event triggered internal audit escalation and led to the introduction of dual sourcing policies, SOC 2 and ISO 27001 dual certification mandates, and real-time compliance dashboards. Notably, procurement and legal were restructured to co-own risk classification frameworks for all distribution partners. Analyst in focus, Sanchit Gogia. Sanchit Gogia, or SVG as he is popularly known, is a globally recognized technology analyst, innovation strategist, digital consultant, and board advisor. SVG is the chief analyst, founder and CEO of Greyhound Research, a global, award-winning technology research, advisory, consulting, and education firm. Greyhound Research works closely with global organizations, their CXOs, and the board of directors on technology and digital transformation decisions. SVG is also the founder and CEO of the House of Greyhound, an eclectic venture focusing on interdisciplinary innovation. Copyright policy. All content contained on the Greyhound Research website is protected by copyright law and may not be reproduced, distributed, transmitted, displayed, published, or broadcast without the prior written permission of Greyhound Research or, in the case of third-party materials, the prior written consent of the copyright owner of that content. You may not alter, delete, obscure, or conceal any trademark, copyright, or other notice appearing in any Greyhound Research content. We request our readers not to copy Greyhound Research content and not republish or redistribute them, in whole or partially, via emails or republishing them in any media, including websites, newsletters, or intranets. We understand that you may want to share this content with others, so we've added tools under each content piece that allow you to share the content. If you have any questions, please get in touch with our community relations team at connect@thoffer.com.